I'm Dean Farmer, Scoutmaster of Troop 6 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Uh, Today is January 30th, 1999, and we're here to interview Mr. Walter Bronson Potter. Bronson Potter is the oldest living member of Troop 6 that we've been able to identify. He was born in February of 1908. Moved to Knoxville, Tennessee with his father, Dr. Potter, a famous physician, in 1913. His father is trained at in Vienna and Berlin prior to coming here to the Knoxville community. Bronson Potter joined Troop 6 in May of 1920, and we're here to interview him today about the history of Troop 6. I'm a member of Troop 6 and joined in 1960 and an Eagle Scout, and Mr. Bronson Potter is an Eagle Scout, the oldest living Eagle Scout in Troop 6. We're also joined by our Assistant Scoutmaster, John Corkendall. John Corkendall, his father was Martin Corkendall, who was a member of the original Troop 6 founding charter members. The records indicate that Troop 6 was founded yesterday, into our 85th year. Is that right, John?
January 29th.
January 29th of 1915. Mr. Bronson Potter knew Martin Kirkendall and several of the other members of the troop that we may end up discussing today. And John Corkendall's grandfather, Samuel Corkendall, who was Martin's father, was a deputy commissioner with the Knoxville Council, and in fact helped and visited the troop and took a major trip to the first International Jamboree in 1920. Mr. Bronson Potter knew the boys and was a member of the troop. He's going to tell us his story about that, and we want you to listen to it at this point. Mr. Potter, please tell me a little bit about your early experiences in joining Troop 6. Who do you recall being your initial scoutmaster, and what was your motivation for coming into scouting?
Well, that was the thing to do in those days. We didn't have the things that we have today to entertain the boys. We had to find out what to do to entertain. It seemed like that the thing to do at the time was to join the Boy Scouts. I looked forward to joining because they wouldn't take me until I was 12 years of age.
You had to actually turn 12 first.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right. Anyway, first things first. You had to become of age first.
Was it the practice of the troops to just let anybody in, or did they vote on the
We kind of knew what we wanted, what the kids wanted to do. We knew almost exactly what they wanted to do. We had to work for merit badges. That's the bottom line of scouting, was to do something, to help people do something, to help one another do something. If we couldn't do it by ourselves, we'd get help from my buddies that pitched in.
Okay, I have the May 14th, 1920 troop report for Troop 6, and it says Bronson Potter was voted into the troop on that day. Did typically they vote boys into the troop?
I didn't realize that was happening, but that's what did happen.
Okay. So after you got into the troop, how long did you remain in the troop?
A total of about 5 years. Very tight from a real tight hold on the late troop for at least 5 years.
All right, and I believe at the end of that point, you also began to serve as an assistant scoutmaster. Is that right? You told me at one point that was in the range of like maybe 1927 to 29, right before you went with Champion Paper. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. We've so generally you had some involvement with Troop 6 from 1920 up through about 1929.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. As I recall, you were very active. You're an avid camper, or you were an avid camper in the 20s. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. And as I understand, you were involved in both the Elkmont camp and the Scout summer camp, which I think you told me you called Wonderland Park.
Wonderland Park.
Tell me how they ran summer camp and how that worked, how you were able to do that.
Well, the first place, you have to have a place to go. You have to have a check-in spot and a check-out spot. We worked in conjunction, and the scout worked at Wonderland Park area. Worked in conjunction with the promoters of Camp LeCompte, which was established in 1923 at the same area that was started actually by TMI down at Sweetwater.
The school?
School, Tennessee Military Institute.
Okay.
And the school built a main building, a kitchen, and a dining hall at Wonderland Park, down in front of Wonderland Park Hotel.
Not right near Elkmont, is that right? Okay. Well, how did the camp work? Which camp went first, and how did you participate?
The main camp came in for 8 weeks, starting in June. And the group that were going to handle the scout group came in at the same time. And they ran the camp, Camp LeCompte, for 8 weeks.
And you were on that staff?
On that staff.
Okay.
And then they closed. We were off a week. We got You
told me recycled the other day.
Recycled was a good word for it. And we were doing recycling in those days. And after a week's layoff, or not laying off, we were busy as we could be, getting ready for the scouts to come in. They came in for 2 weeks at Wonderland Park.
Okay. And you did that all the way up to 29 for several years or something like that?
Several years.
Okay. In addition now, as I understand it, you, besides being active with Troop 6, you also had some knowledge and kind of helped support the Knoxville Council of Troops. Is that what it was called? The Knoxville Scout Council or something like that?
Yes, that's basically, I can hardly remember my own name in those days, but basically it's how it evolved.
How big a place did they rent, and where was it in Knoxville that they had that? You said they rented a space in
We had
the
one
Empire?
room in the old Empire building, which was located at the corner of the Market and Church Street.
And that was the council office right there.
That was it. That was Boy Scouting in East Tennessee.
Okay.
One room and a closet full of junk. And that's basically what it amounted to.
Okay, that was pretty much through the 20s.
That's what the people inherited when they stepped in.
Okay. Now, you have a pretty clear recollection of these dates because in 1930, you went to work for Champion Paper Company.
Yeah.
Tell us what you did in connection with Champion? What?
Well, at those times, uh, Champion Paper wanted to sell some land. The people in North Carolina and Tennessee, on both sides of the mountain, wanted to sell the land, and the people on this side of the mountain and left wanted to buy some land. Now, how do you set a price on land that you didn't buy, you didn't pay for? What did it cost you? You don't know because they didn't pay for anything. Actually, all the land that the Champion Paper owned in all this mountain area is timberland, virgin timber, that had never been touched with an axe. All timber. Well, what's it worth? Well, can you tell me what an acre of mountain timber would be worth? I could, nobody. So you have to find out what it would cost to get the timber out. You have to figure what it would cost to get it to the mill. And what did you have left when you sawed up all this dead wood, so to speak, and get the raw product to the mill? So you have to know those things before you know what land is worth.
So did you help survey their property here in East Tennessee?
We surveyed. Champion had a engineering group out. The United States government had a group out. They each had a group out of timber cruisers, we call them. I don't know what the proper name is, but they were timber cruisers that could go through the woods and say, there's so many board feet in this poplar, and there's so many board feet in
When was this property of Champions? Was what was the federal government later purchased to put into the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, large tract sale?
That was the beginning.
Okay, so that's what you all were working on, getting that property sold by Champion.
And they went to court and came up with an agreeable price, and it was sold. The Park Service, and it is now the National Park. One of the handiest around East Tennessee, certainly, and
I think we get more visitors than any
more
other
visitors than any, all of them put together.
Okay. Let's go back and talk just a minute about some of your experiences in Troop 6. I think you, one of the things you indicated to me at one point, and I want you to just tell the story, is you took a trip or maybe two trips in the early 20s to New York and visited National Scout Headquarters. Why don't you tell us who you went with and what you were looking for and what you did up there?
Well,
okay, we'll just.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, we'll get it fixed. Miss Potter, you were just getting ready to tell me about the trips you took to New York with one of your assistant scoutmasters and some of the things you did up there. Why don't you tell me?
Well, those are a couple of nice trips. We were fortunate enough in Knoxville to have a group of gentlemen that we thought were scoutmasters. We didn't know what they were, but they belonged to a union, I guess you'd say. But they ran scouting in the East Tennessee area. I think they called them a council. Maybe that's a good word for it. Gentlemen and scholars, the heart, interested in boys and boys' wants and so forth. Consequently, we didn't have the problems that some of the boys have had these last few years.
So who took you to New York?
Well, of course, Dad picked up the tab, but one of the scout directors, whom I had bought, cooked, served a dinner to of my own preparation, my own menus and so forth.
Is that one of your scout requirements?
One of the requirements to get a merit badge and cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to show them my recipes. I had to show them my accounting, the purchases I made at the supermarket, etc. And he asked me if I'd like to take a trip to New York. I said, I'd like to take a trip to anywhere. Anyway, we planned this trip. Professor Darnell was a professor of Germanic languages at the university. And he had a brother in Atlantic City, retired surgeon. And another brother, retired opera singer, teaching in New York. So Professor went to called on each one of his brothers a couple of times, and I was asked to go. Well, he let me do what I wanted to do on the beach, and we saw everything that we wanted to see. Shows didn't mean anything. We got to see anyone we wanted to see. And tickets were no problem because we had access to most any place we wanted. But
Well, did you make a trip to the National Scout headquarters?
yeah, we went to National Scout headquarters.
Tell me why you went and what you were looking for, and what happened when you got there.
Well, I tell you, I thought I needed a ring. I don't know why.
Scout ring?
A Boy Scout ring.
Okay.
Everybody needed a Boy Scout ring.
Well, you probably needed one.
And I walked in up there and announced myself and showed my credentials as a Boy Scout, Troop 6, Knoxville, Tennessee. And this girl at the desk said, "Oh, my goodness, fellas, listen to this. Here's a couple of gentlemen from Knoxville, Tennessee, Troop 6 in Knoxville." Well, I thought we had a hanging going on or something for that day. I didn't know whether that was covered up or not. But
well, did they hang?
We got the full blue plate special treatment, and bought the ring, and really got a good send off for being announced as the best troop in scouting at that time.
The best troop in the whole nation.
That was the troop in the whole nation.
At some point by 1922 or that kind of range, there were about 32 boys that had gotten into the troop, or maybe 21. How many of those do you recall? You told me some numbers about how many each all earned Eagles.
So at one time we had 32 members
of Troop 6?
Of Troop 6 were all Eagle Scouts.
And all 32 of them had become
all 32 of them were Eagle Scouts. Our scoutmaster had taken every merit badge in the book.
And that was Mr. Strader, is that?
That's Hugh P. Strayer.
Okay. And he had earned every one of them.
He was on every one of them.
Okay. And so
that's what it takes. You've got to have an operator and a good man on the camera to get this in tight.
Well, that's in terms of the part of the recognition that the national headquarters had of Troop 6 was based on the fact that it was so unusual to have a troop that had all Eagle Scouts in it.
Yeah.
Is that correct? In addition, I think about 1920, John's grandfather, Samuel Corkendall, he took a number of members of the troop to England to the International Jamboree.
Yeah.
Do you remember them preparing for that?
I remember well, but I was too young to go.
Okay, but the older guys got to go.
Older.
All right. And do you remember any of the particular preparations they went through, or?
Well, there was a lot of hustling and bustling and deciding what to take and how to take it, and who was going and why and so forth. A lot of preparation. Nobody had ever been to Europe, in my group anyway. And this was a chance for those boys to see some of the world.
And they took advantage of it.
Took advantage of it.
Okay, and you remember what, about 8 or so? I've actually got a count somewhere, but there were quite a number from Troop 6 that went.
Oh yeah, there was quite a number. We've got a picture of them someplace.
Okay.
We'll find them one of these days.
You might need to move your hand away from the camera. They may not be able to pick you up.
Oh.
The voice projection there. Let me. Well, you're talking about needing an operator to keep a troop going, and certainly scouting does survive on the volunteers that kind of help run the troops and provide leadership and knowledge and skills and assess the boys. But you actually became one of those because you actually worked as an assistant scoutmaster for the troop, did you?
Sure did.
Okay, and I think you told me that when the scoutmaster might not be able to make it, then it was your job to kind of take over, make sure that the boys had an activity and that sort of thing. That was kind of the way you all swapped out on it. Is that what happened? All right. Now, when I actually was able to go over with you the troop roster that I had identified in 1922. You and I went over it, and I asked you to the best of your recollection, and there were some you recalled specifically, and some that you didn't put on this list because you weren't sure if they had eagles. But we ended up going, and I'm just going to run through these names. We had William Petway, Elliot McNutt, Hodges Briscoe, Dan Briscoe, George Coleman, George Cole, Deron DeWeese, Preston Edwards, Bud Gaines, Jack Galbraith, Eugene Gallion, Alfred Gaunt, James Hall, Beach Hall, James F. Hall, Charles House, Oscar Hanley, Hazen House you weren't sure about, but John Jones, Neil Jurleman, Albert Kelly, Robert Kennerly and Warren Kennerly, David Lewis, John Lindsay, Hugh McClellan, Thomas McCroskey, C.J. McKinney, Bob McClure, Harcourt Morgan, Bronson Potter, Ben Sanford, Hugh Smith, Willard Todd, Charles Thompson, Arthur Wood, James Young, Ralph Rogers, Chubb Smith. That's Chubb Smith, who's later from Knoxville Journal, I believe you told me. Tom Parlin, Robert Johnson, Hugh Faust, David Taylor, Sandy Bonneman, Stanley Levy, Alfred Tripp, and William Brown. You all those were part of that group of 32 that made Eagle. Okay, that's what we went over.
That'll give you an idea of how many boys we lost in the service.
Were a number of them killed in World War I?
A number of them. Just a number of them.
Did that deplete a lot of your friends and ranks when you were? I guess that would have been back in about the mid-20s or something. Is that right? Okay. Well, let me ask you this: are there any other? I think you stayed interested in summer camps and whatnot. Just in terms of your own personal biography, you were in the Army in 1931, and then from 36 to 40, you were the superintendent of Big Ridge State Park, I believe. And you knew my grandfather there, C.H. Charles Dean, and I think his wife Helen was a good friend of your wife Blanche's. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then in the 1940s, you joined American Home Products for about 7 years and went out to Houston, Texas, and then came back to Knoxville in 1947. Is that right?
Came back in 47 and changed considerably the product I was selling, but a new product came on the market during the war, and we were able to pick it up and go with it.
Okay. So you've been a big porter, and you're here at Shannondale Retirement Center in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to let John ask you just a couple of questions about your experiences with Troop 6. Let me just cover one thing. I have reviewed some of the old records and noticed on occasion that Deputy Commissioner Kirkendall would come by. What was the purpose of these visits? But besides him, I've also noticed Commissioner Tom's name, that he would come by and would give sometimes occasionally some other scoutmasters. How did they work that? How did the adults, what did the adults do when they came in?
Well, they just came by to see that we were running on schedule, or we were taking care of the do's and the don'ts.
Checking on advancements.
Yeah, and keeping up with what's going on with if you're selling a product, you have to know what it is. You have to keep up with what the value is, and to keep these youngsters interested, it's a hard job.
Okay.
And they're due a lot of credit for any time that they put in for helping kids is always needed.
Now, Commissioner Tom, that was Buck Tom,
Yeah.
that was, and he is the same gentleman who started what is now the Tom's Food Company. Is that correct? And he donated the property for the Boy Scout Camp Buck Tom's over in Roane County. Is that the same gentleman?
Yeah.
Okay. He seemed to have a strong interest in scouting, I think. Did he convey that to the boys?
Yeah.
And you all met, you said, you talking about them coming by, but you all met during the times you were with the troop at Second Presbyterian Church. And where was the location then?
At the corner of Walnut and Church, where the library is today.
Okay. Down in Knoxville, right in downtown Knoxville. I noticed in some of the minutes from the old meetings that after the meeting, you all would occasionally take an excursion to the YMCA. Do you remember doing that on occasion?
Oh, I don't remember so many things that I can't.
Okay. Well, I had some notes indicating occasionally they'd go to the YMCA and take a swim after
Well, we've
scouting.
done that, yeah.
Okay. You also planned some outings at what was then known as the Scout Farm, I think, and I think you just told me today that was out in Powell.
Out in Powell.
Tell me how you got there and what the basic agenda.
We went to the Southern Railway Station and got on the train and went to Powell.
Okay.
Powell, Tennessee.
And then when you got to Powell, you got off at the station. Where did you go from there?
We followed a trail over to the campsite. It must have been 5 or 6 miles, maybe not that far from.
What kind of gear did you take with you?
Oh, nut beans and potatoes, and hot dogs.
Well, I hope you cooked something better than that for your cooking merit badge.
That was true.
Did you
We didn't have the counselors with us usually at those times.
Okay. So the troop just would go out. That'd be an overnight for the troop.
Yeah.
They go do. And they take a pup tent or something like that.
Yeah, I don't really know. We depended on water more than anything else because we didn't carry ice around with us.
Okay. Let me ask one other question because this has shown up in one of the gentlemen that I saw that originally or joined the troop just shortly after it was founded in 1915 was a guy named Arthur Wood. Do you recall Arthur Wood?
Oh, very well. He and I were very close friends.
Well, tell me a little bit about him and his interests, as you recall, in terms of his focus on scouting.
Well, he was interested in boys, and he was a professor of engineering at the University of Tennessee, and was into everything. Whatever floated boat, that's what he went with. A gentleman and a scholar never was any better.
As I understand, he went all the way through and became Eagle in Troop 6, and then he served for a few years as an assistant scoutmaster in Troop 6. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Okay. And then I understand from talking with some other folks later on that he left Troop 6 to go to Troop 5 as their scoutmaster. Were you aware of that?
Well, I did know it, but I'd forgotten it.
Okay. Okay.
But he was a great gentleman.
All right. John, did you have a couple of follow-up questions for us to kind of get wound up there?
Yes, I'd like to ask him a few things. You know, we share a lot of great history in common. My father, Martin Corkendall, was a friend of yours,
Yeah.
and he started out 5 years earlier. I wanted to read you this little piece here. Now, this was written by Arthur Wood in 1921. I'm just going to read a short piece of this, which starts out, "The history of Troop 6 begins on the 29th day of January, 1915, when the Bob White Patrol, composed of 6 boys and an assistant scoutmaster, was organized. The 6 boys, Clarence Hood, Robert Watson, Houston McNutt, John Morrell, Martin Corkendall, and Raymond Warthens, were the founders and charter members of Troop 6. The assistant scoutmaster, Mr. Morgan. He was the troop's first leader." Are most of those names familiar with you?
Some of them,
Not all of them.
not all of them.
And of course, my grandfather, Samuel Corkendall, you knew well too.
I do him well.
I was very interested in the thing that Martin told me about the first World Jamboree. You know, they went over on a ship called the Pocahontas,
Yeah.
which required 5 days in the crossing. So that was quite an adventure in
Oh,
itself.
definitely.
I know he talked about that for years later. The Jamboree trip to London, then they went over to France
Yeah.
and Belgium too as well.
That's quite a trip. That's quite a trip for those kids.
And you were saying that your time in the troop overlapped with Martin, my father's. Like he was going out about the time you were coming in.
Yeah.
Did you say something too about being assistant leader with him as well?
I don't follow you, John.
Did you assist him?
And at Camp Lacan.
That's where the two of you
Yeah.
worked together. I knew you'd said something about
Yeah,
working with.
we were very close in that combination. It's very close. 7 and 8 in a tent.
Well, that's what they had as a summer camp, the 8
Yeah.
and 10.
What were some of those? Give us an idea of the setting of the camps, the type of tents they use. You know, things are so different from today. Today they have all the lightweight tents that they can carry in their packs, and they were quite different in that day, weren't they?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of the things we have today. It's amazing what changes have been made in equipment. Of course, it's past my time too, but there's sure a lot of changes been made in equipment.
I remember they had the big heavy canvas tents.
Oh yeah, you could hardly move them.
It's interesting, in the 1911 Scout Handbook, they have recipes for making your own tent and the waterproofing and all the mixed turpentine and the pitch that they would put with it, beeswax.
Yeah.
I know they must have weighed a ton. Martin, I remember telling me that very often you'd have a buddy with you and you'd carry one half of the tent rolled up and the other guy would carry the other half. You'd connect them, say if the two of you were tenting together, they would join the tents because they were pretty heavy.
Well, I don't know how we ever got along with some of that stuff. Some of them didn't.
Well, can you think of anything else that we ought to include here as part of a record of the troop that you can recall that would sort of add to the history or what the boys did or any specific?
Well, I could probably sit here the rest of the day and talk scouting and boys and whatnot, but I think you've done a pretty good job of digging it out.
Well, I'm gonna go, and I guess John, you about ready to wind up? Or you got another question or two on your mind?
I think that pretty well gets most of it.
Well, I'm going to wind up here with the April, it looks like 29th 1921 minutes. You would have been in the troop almost a whole year at that time, Mr. Potter. And I'm reading from the original handwritten notes of the scribe. Now, as I understand it, these troop reports, you've seen these in the past, I guess. Those were written up by the scribe, the boy that was the scribe. He kept that. That was his job, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This meeting began at 7:30. The meeting was opened by the Lord's Prayer and the Scout Oath. That was usual.
Yeah.
The roll was called, and the tests were reported, and dues collected.
Mm-hmm.
Tests reported means the advancements you'd accomplished during the week, or that you were out of meeting. Is that right?
No.
Okay. It says Bob Boney entertained us, meaning the troop, with a heavyweight wrestling match between Bronson Potter and Chet McClendon, and a featherweight champion wrestling match between Dan Briscoe and Eugene Taylor.
Oh, that's nice.
Did you provide part of the entertainment with wrestling matches for the troops?
I don't remember that. Well, I couldn't reach around Dan Briscoe.
Couldn't reach
He
around
was
it.
the biggest man we had in the whole county.
Well, they said he was a lightweight.
They must have had their figures crossed up somewhere.
You figure you should have been the lightweight, is that right? Maybe they got it backwards.
They must have got it backwards.
Okay. Well, that's kind of what I wanted, and just to make sure as we conclude that we remember, one of the key to scouting, in addition to the things you've mentioned, is the scouting. We need to have fun, and I take it you all did a lot of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things you did for fun, apparently, according to these records, occasionally you took a trip over to Mr. Imes' house, where we now have the Imes Nature Center.
Yeah.
And y'all, according to these notes, you rode the streetcar over there and then walked to his house.
That's right.
Did he do nature studies?
Oh yeah, and his family all worked in it. So.
And so they were pretty informative. That was pretty informative. I mean, that's where he did nature study over at Imes Park. Well, part of the other fun is I want to read a concluding, and I don't have any indication to know whether you were present at this troop meeting or not, but apparently the notes from March 30th of 1923 sort of run like this, and I want to get your reaction. I want you to let me know if this could have actually happened at a Troop 6 meeting at Second Presbyterian Church in 1923. And I want you to let me know.
You're asking an awful lot there.
All right, I'll read it to you. It says, open the meeting by raising, I'm sure he left out the flag, and repeating the Lord's Prayer. Afterward, repeating the oath. I'm sure he meant the scout oath. Roll call and good turn follow.
Yeah.
Now, what did they do for good turns? Just report on it?
Report on what we cleaned up an alley or we gathered up a bunch of trash someplace.
Okay. The bulletin was read. I'm not sure what the bulletin was.
Be careful about the bullets.
Well, the bulletin was read, and Troop 6 is out for first prize or bust. Does that make sense to you, exactly what that means? Is there a competition or something?
We competed with every troop in the
county?
In the county.
The council, I get that. And then it says, this is the concluding sentence, and this is one I really want you to tell me about. It says, everything was going all right when somebody threw a giant firecracker in the window, and the meeting ended with a bang.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Okay. Even that could happen in 1923. Is that right?
I had another thought that I wanted to throw
You
in.
better hurry, son. Time is getting short, though, the old man.
I recall you told me several times that scouting wasn't just the meetings and the things that you did there, but you really lived scouting.
Okay.
Today, kids have Nintendo games, television, and everything else. At that time, you really went out and practiced all of scouting. You said you used to go out and build bridges and towers, and these skills were used as your entertainment for, it was
It was
a
entertaining.
way of life, literally. And I thought
We,
that was
we
really
had to
interesting.
learn to do things.
Well, Mr. Potter, we appreciate your time and thank you for letting us come do this interview.
Well,
and
I appreciate your
we
interest.
and we may have to ask some follow-up questions later on, but anyway, best of you, sir, and we'll be talking to you later on.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Well, we appreciate you coming.